It's not forgoing of the light, it's not the opening of eyes, it's not the waking, it's the rise. It's not the shade, we should be past it. It's the light and it's the obstacle that casts it. It's the heat that drives the light, it's the fire it ignites.
We admit everybody?
Yes, please.
It's not the song, it is the singing. It's the heaven of the human spirit ringing. It is the bringing of the line. It is the bearing of the rhyme. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And I could cry. Behind it, Lord, the fear of fellow man is a mere assignment, and everything that we're denied by keeping the divide. It's not the waking, it's the rising. And I could cry. Stronger than me, straight into the face that tells you to rattle your chains if you love being free. Lord, I could cry. 'Cause power is my love when my love reaches to me. James Brown cried power, Seagull cried power, Morgan cried power.
Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you have joined us today for this Restorative Colorado conversation, this listening circle, and the opportunity to hear from some folks that have been practicing restorative justice practices around the state of Colorado in a variety of settings and ways. So if you would kindly make sure that you are beginning in gallery view and that you are muted to begin with, I am going to be sort of your tech voice of our time together. I'm Deb Witzel, and I am the president of the Colorado Coalition for Restorative Justice Practices. And it is a real honor and an exciting moment for us to all be gathered in this way. We've sort of long dreamed of the members of CCRJP and the Restorative Justice Council collaborating to reach out to policymakers and decision makers around the state and amplify the knowledge about restorative justice practices. So this is an inaugural and exciting event for us. Thank you all so much for choosing to be here today. So the meeting is being recorded. If that is in any way an issue for you, please let us know that you won't be staying. But because we want to make this available to people who aren't able to attend this morning. And we will also be saving the chat for future reference because there will be times when we're all using the chat to communicate with each other. So we'll also be going from this gallery view into speaker view. And I want to just make sure everybody knows how to do that. In the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, there is a word view with a little grid of boxes. And if you click on that, there's the opportunity to shift your view from gallery to speaker. And when you do that, you'll be able to see the speaker, and we will be able to spotlight speakers for you. We'll be able to make sure that you're able to see the voices that are being featured in that moment. So that's the view for our time together. And I also want to, as I'm finishing up these sort of guidelines, invite you all to introduce yourself in the chat. So if you want to just put your name and whatever you're inspired to put, what you do in the world, why you showed up today, just type a little chat message in so that we can see who's here via the chat. Let's see, what else do I want to give you guidelines around? So that's one chat opportunity for everyone to take in this moment. And at the end, for the whole group, this large reflection group will also have another chat opportunity. And so I want to encourage you to sort of keep the chat quiet, for lack of a better word in this moment, during the time that our listening circle folks and our sharing circle folks are talking, so that we can stay focused on what's being shared auditorily. Then I also want to let you know that if you have any technical issues during the course of our time together, that Kelly Taylor Russell and Rachel Larson are our tech support folks. And Kelly and Rachel, would you unmute and say hello so folks can see your faces?
Hi, everyone.
Patty.
Great, thank you. They will put their contact information in the chat too. So if you need to text them or direct message them, you can easily reach out to them if you're struggling with anything. So I also want to encourage you all to take care of yourselves in this time and in this space, whatever that means for you. We will, most of us will be having our cameras off during the listening circle and the sharing circle time. So you can do what you need to do to take care of yourself in that time. And my primary role, I'm just going to give a heads up, particularly to the listening circle and the sharing circle folks. My primary duty here, after I finish this technical stuff, is to keep time and to keep our conversations moving forward. So you will experience the sound of a time, what do you call it, alarm, when your time is up and we need to move to the next speaker. And most of the time, our talking time for the listening circle will be pretty brief. So I just want to give you that heads up in advance. And what else? I think that's it for the technical pieces. Kelly and Rachel, have I forgotten anything? Anything important?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, super. So it is my great pleasure now to hand over to Alice. Our Alice Price is the representative for the RJ Council and our co-creator and co-host, the visionary of this amazing event, along with Liz. Alice, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. I'm handing it over.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, so welcome everyone. Like Deb, I just want to say it's really thrilling. We've been planning this event for a number of months and had lots of different sort of permutations and iterations of how we would do this. And I feel like we've landed on a wonderful design, perhaps one that we'll continue to use into the future. Basically, the intention for this gathering is to create space for the CCRJP, for the Restorative Justice Council, and various state policy allies to hear and learn from a diverse group of community partners in order to strengthen connections and relationships and hopefully inspire actions that will support broad and equitable access to restorative justice all across Colorado for a more restorative Colorado. Our event design is a modified circle with 3 concentric or nested circles. All of you are in the large circle, so welcome everyone in our large circle. It's great to see so many people here. It looks like we have over 90 folks, if my counter is right, joining us in the large reflection circle today. Your role will be to listen and learn, and you will have, as Deb said, an opportunity later to flood the chat with things that you've been hearing and learning and what you hope to do next. Then nested within that is a middle circle of some of our state public policy allies that have agreed to be with us today. So there are about 10 or so folks in that group, and we'll introduce them in just a minute. And their role also is to listen and reflect, but they'll have a little more direct engagement during our time together. And then the third smaller circle is what we're calling our sharing circle. Again, around 10 voices to share diverse initiatives regarding restorative justice practices around the state, to give us just a snapshot of some of the exciting things that are happening and what the future holds for restorative Colorado. So I'm going to invite all of you who are not in one of these smaller circles to turn off your cameras now, if you would. And do we want to have our sharing circle folks turn their cameras off for a minute as well?
I think they can turn them off for a moment. We'll have them turn them on when it's time.
Okay, great. So we're going to now be highlighting the state policy allies who are part of our listening circle. And I want to give a special thanks to the 3 legislative co-hosts who joined us early on in planning this event. And that would be Representative Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez, Senator Julie Gonzalez, and Senator Pete Lee. We're also thrilled to have Senator Janet Buckner join us as well. I'm going to do a roll call of our listening circle folks. And as Deb said, we have about a minute for each of you to say a word about why you're joining us today. What is your interest in restorative justice? And I'm going to start with our Attorney General, Phil Weiser. I believe he's going to need to move on to another meeting before we're done today. So Attorney General, do you want to turn on your mic and just say a word to us?
Sure thing. My mic is on. Hopefully I'm coming through. What I would say is restoring confidence, restoring relationships, healing breaches is something we need in our society. The extent to which hate and distrust fuels more hate and distrust breaches grow wider is something that is a core societal challenge. How we all practice empathy and how we seek to resolve conflicts matters for us continuing to be a democratic republic that honors every individual and that works towards this idea of e pluribus unum. From many, we can all be part of one.
Thank you, Attorney General. And I believe you have Matt Baca with you as well from your Community Engagement Division. So we want to welcome Matt, and he will be with us throughout the meeting today as well. And Representative Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez, brief introduction, if you would.
Okay, so just making sure it might be a little delayed. I think I have it in the right. Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone. Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez. I'm a state representative for House District 4, which is located in Northwest and West Denver. I am really honored to be able to be a part of this today. And I think, part of my goal in being here is really just to listen. I have worked in juvenile justice and child welfare for 17 years. And have worked with many folks, some of them on this call, around when we talk about restorative justice and for our young people, for juveniles, how incredibly important that is in development as they become adults. And so I find lots of value in being able to be a part of this. And I am truly looking forward to working with all of you and really just listening.
Thank you. And Senator Julie Gonzalez.
Morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Julie Gonzalez, and I represent Northwest and Downtown Denver in the Colorado State Senate. And my goal in being here today is to hear from you all as to what's working, how these individual efforts can be spread more intentionally in different aspects of our criminal legal system across the state and through communities as well. And so when it comes to policy, similar to what the Attorney General was mentioning, we have a lot of work to do, and there has been a lot of crisis that we're all navigating, which creates a lot of tension, which creates a lot of conflict, right? And so certainly as it pertains to the criminal justice space, but also more broadly as well. So excited for you all to learn from you all and to listen in on discussions.
Yeah. Thank you. If you hear the little noise in the background, that's the little 1 minute reminder back there. So I'm going to turn to, thank you so much, Senator Pete Lee.
Thank you, Allison. Thanks, team, for putting all this together. I'm here today to advocate for restorative justice to be used more broadly and more widely in the criminal and juvenile systems in Colorado. We had close to 200,000 case filings last year, summonses and arrests throughout the state of Colorado. And we had tens of thousands of cases that were filed, felony cases and juvenile cases. And, quite frankly, in my experience as a criminal defense attorney over the years, seeing the system, it doesn't work very well. This idea of punishment to rehabilitate is a flawed model. With a 50% recidivism rate, we've got to do things differently and a better way. Restorative justice and pilot programs and time again has proven effective in promoting responsibility and success. So let's move to that.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator. And Senator Janet Buckner.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Senator Janet Buckner. I am so thrilled to be on this call today. I represent Aurora and Arapahoe County, Senate District 28. Last year was the first year I ran a restorative justice bill, and it was a juvenile justice restorative bill. And of course, I was encouraged to do that by my mentor, Pete Lee, but it put a fire under me. And I realized how much work we need to do in this space. Shared experiences and talking to so many people who have gone through the system has really made me realize how much work we have to do. And I'm willing to do the work, and I'm ready to do the work. And I met so many amazing people as I was running this bill last year. And so many of those people are on this call. And one of my biggest supporters is Mr. Weiser, and he has really made me realize how much work we need to do in this space. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. State Public Defender Megan Ring, and also Chief Deputy Tina Feng.
Hi, I'm Megan Ring. I'm the Colorado State Public Defender, and so many of you are familiar with Liz Porter Merrill, who is a part of our agency, and we're here to support her in the work that she does. As Senator Lee just mentioned, I've been a public defender in this state for 25 years, and unfortunately, the system has become more and more broken, and our clients, the indigent and marginalized population in this state, is affected and harmed more and more by the way the legal system works currently. And we really support, as an agency, this work that everyone here is trying to do, because we firmly believe, as Senator Lee said, we've got to move in a different direction so we cause less harm to anyone involved in the system, and create more justice and more healing.
Thank you, Megan. And I understand you may need to leave a bit early, and thank you to Tina Feng, your Chief Deputy, for joining us and staying with us through the meeting today. And Lisa Duran.
Good morning, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, and I'm here because we, at the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, we're a statewide coalition of 85 members. And we not only want to pass good policy that really promotes the inclusion of every immigrant within our state, as a form of strengthening democracy, but we also want to build stronger communities. And I do really believe that the practices of restorative justice really can help overcome some of the divisions that we do see, particularly in rural areas where our immigrant members can feel isolated or even as the subjects of hostility because of their presence. So thank you very much for this. Also, I will also say that internally, we are exploring how it is that our organization reproduces white supremacy practices and patriarchy. And we believe restorative justice practices can help us in that area as well.
Thank you. Dr. Ashley Idris.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Dr. Ashley Idris. I am the Director of Student Engagement and Dropout Prevention at the Colorado Department of Education. Within my unit and team, we have a grant that supports wholeheartedly restorative justice. So this is something that is near and dear to the department's method and ways of not only promoting equity, but really trying to see the best practices for helping restore different practices amongst our students. And something that we do is we keep track of the schools and districts that utilize restorative justice and try to use that as a recommended practice and strategy for schools and districts that may not use it, who have higher disciplinary rates than others. So very excited to be here, happy to be a participant and listening in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Gretchen Russo.
Morning, everyone. My name is Gretchen Russo. I'm the Judicial and Legislative Administrator for the Office of Children, Youth, and Families at the Colorado Department of Human Services. Our office oversees the Division of Youth Services, the Division of Child Welfare, the Juvenile Parole Board, and domestic violence programs, as well as a number of other programs. And I'm really here as a newer council member, as well as someone who does work in the juvenile justice and child welfare arena. As others have mentioned, there's a lot going on in both of those arenas as far as new reforms and new processes. And one of the main things that I'm here today is to really listen and learn and see how the connections can continue. I would really hate for us all to be doing different things and going in different directions. So one of my hopes is really to connect the dots and the initiatives that are already happening so that we are all kind of moving forward together. Thanks, Alice.
Thank you. And last but not least, Dr. Shannon Sleva.
Thanks, Alice. I'm Shannon Sleva. I'm an associate professor in the Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Denver. I teach and conduct research there on restorative and collaborative approaches to justice, and more broadly, my work tries to understand the role of dialogue and relationships in creating the conditions for justice. I think I'm here because my work, my research shows me the potential and the magic that restorative justice has to offer us, but also the challenges of implementing it in systems and through policy. I've worked closely with Coloradans here as well as people across the country in understanding the implementation and impacts of restorative justice policy. And so I'm really just here to learn what questions should we be asking and what knowledge is needed to help grow this practice in our communities.
Thank you. And I would like to share 3 regrets from folks who were invited to be a part of the listening circle today and had other commitments. Brandon Davis, policy advisor to Governor Polis, has a new baby. Also, Monica Chambers, the Restorative Justice Council chair currently and in the Victim Services Unit, RJ liaison for the Department of Corrections, and Brett Sheldon from the Native American Rights Fund. We would like to specifically acknowledge the absence of a Native American voice in the listening circle today, as our country's historical first harm lies in land theft and genocide of Native Americans. And the roots of many restorative practices lie in Indigenous practices as well. Addressing harm and being inclusive are core to our vision of a more restorative Colorado. And so we will be using an image for one of our participant images of a circle of empty chairs. These are the missing voices, whoever they may be, from today's event. And we welcome the filling of those chairs as we move forward towards a restorative Colorado. I'd like to introduce now our circle keepers for the sharing circle, and I'd like to invite our sharing circle members to turn your cameras on if you have them off right now. We're really thrilled to have Elizabeth Rooks and Ames Stinson as the circle keepers for our sharing circle. And I'm going to turn it over to them now to introduce themselves a bit more and to lead us into this really central part of our event today, listening to these diverse initiatives.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I am beyond delighted to see so many of you participating. It was exciting to hear the listening circle introductions. There are people who are already passionate about RJ, and so much of our work is already done. The purpose of today's call is to not just light on fire those who maybe haven't gotten the vision yet, but to share, to come up with ways to, as Dr. Sleva said, identify the potential and the magic of RJ. And so we are so excited to have with us members of the community who provide different voices of how RJ is being implemented throughout Colorado. There are hundreds of different initiatives happening in Colorado, thousands of people who make this their life's work every single day. We can't hear everyone, but our goal is to have a representative sample of folks who are living and breathing it, who can talk about what it is that they're doing now and what it is that we are hoping to see, the vision that we have for a restorative Colorado. I am a former board member of the Colorado Coalition of Restorative Justice Practices. I had the responsibility for the outreach committee of which this was born, and then Alice and Price and Liz Porter Merrill just took it and ran with it in wonderful new ways. I'm so excited to see the work that's happening. I recently moved from Colorado, so I have resigned from the board, but it is still very, very much a part of my heart, which is why I'm here today and delighted to be a participant with you. Before we get started, I'd like Ames to introduce themselves to you all as well.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ames Stinson. I use pronouns they, them, theirs. I have the privilege to serve as the Restorative Justice Program Manager for the City of Inglewood's Municipal Court Program. We just started that this summer. And also to serve as the CCRJP Vice President of the Board. I also get to work with lovely people in the Restorative Rainbow Alliance, which you're going to hear more about today, as well as some of the work with the National Association for Community and Restorative Justice, and a variety of other folks that I get to engage in the restorative justice work. And so pleasure to be here with you all. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks so much, Ames. So what we're going to do is introduce the people who will be part of the sharing circle. And I'm going to tell you their names and titles in the sequence that they will be speaking in. And then we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Hani Raley, who is the Assistant Executive Director of the ARC of Colorado. Next, Rami El Garib, who is the founder of Restorative Rainbow Alliance, and also a RJ coordinator and was a former person working with the Youth Zone. Next is Casey Ballinger, who is the post-conviction victim advocate for the Blue Bench. Following Casey is Liz Porter Merrill, whom you've heard about and have seen already. Liz is the RJ Law and Practices attorney, and she works in the Office of the State Public Defender. She's also the founder of the Circles Project. Following Liz is Vinny Cervantes. Vinny is the founder and organizing director of the Denver Alliance for Street Health Response. Following Vinny is Cynthia Randall. Cynthia is the program manager for the Latino Coalition for Community Leadership. And then we have Joaquin Mobley. Joaquin is the vice president of Community Works. And then following Joaquin, Luke Yoder. Luke is the executive director for the Center of Restorative Programs in Alamosa. So we're delighted to have everyone participating today. This is such a phenomenal group of people with a lot of very creative ideas, a lot of passion for RJ. Because of that passion, we know that as Deb previously said, I'm going to be her segundo in timekeeping. So I'm going to ask you to keep your remarks to as net as possible. And I know that passion comes out sometimes in ways that we can't stop, but we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to participate. So at this time, let's get started. And so you, Hani, will be the first person up. And here's what everyone is going to be talking about initially. So I know that some of you, RJ has been your life work, your core work for many, many years. You've been living and breathing it for a very long time. And then others are just exploring it and starting to delve into how RJ values and principles are interwoven with your work and how you can use it to strengthen your area of focus. What I want you to do is highlight for us what it is that you're currently doing as it relates to RJ, and then what you're thinking in relation to RJ within Colorado. Hani, starting with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, everyone in all circles. I'm Hani Raley. I use she, her pronouns. I am with the ARC of Aurora. We are a nonprofit advocacy organization dedicated to supporting and advocating for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families in Aurora proper. One of our social enterprises is called Think Change, and it's really intended to change knowledge and behavior of professionals in the lives of people with disabilities. Recently, Colorado Restorative Justice Coordinating Council funded in part a statewide training that we did intended to interrupt that school to prison pipeline for children with disabilities. We know that because of the prevalence of youth with disabilities in juvenile corrections is actually 3 to 5 times greater than youth without disabilities, and that 85% of youth in juvenile detention centers actually have special education qualifying disabilities. We're working to address this while considering potential impacts of restorative justice on the educational system in Aurora. As I mentioned, the Coordinating Council did fund a free online training available that I'll put in the chat once I'm done. And we also do many documentaries focusing on lived experiences of people with disabilities. And right now we are recipients of the North Aurora Transforming Safety Grant supported by the Denver Foundation. intended to address problematic behavior in the home and school environment for kiddos, all intended to decrease suspensions and expulsions, disciplinary measures, but having a real focus on trauma-informed and restorative interventions for those kids. Like I said, I am happy to post all those free products for you in the chat, but thanks for having me.
Awesome, Hani. Thank you so much. Before we go further, I know that many of you will be excited about the things that you're hearing. I would encourage you, those of you within the sharing circle, to take notes so that if time permits and we can swing back around, we'll have the opportunity for you to respond to what it is that you're hearing your compatriots doing. But there's a lot happening and a lot to be excited about. So moving on from Hani to Rami.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rami Al-Gharib, and I was previously the Restorative Justice Coordinator with Youth Zone, where I established the first, and I believe it's still the only, LGBTQ+ youth safe space in the Roaring Fork Valley. And it was funded by the Restorative Justice Council. And I'm also the founder, one of the founders of the Restorative Rainbow Alliance. And it is an alliance that aims to include an LGBTQ+ perspective into the field of restorative justice. It's also an alliance that aims to create virtual safe spaces for LGBTQ+ individuals in rural areas and all across Colorado. And we also are working on trainings to include queer sensitivity in different workplace settings for folks. And so a lot of our work now is focused on creating those safe spaces for the LGBTQ+ community and move forward a queer lens and advocate for LGBTQ+ needs.
Awesome, Rami. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from Liz.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited for this event. My name is Liz Porter Merrill. I use she or they pronouns. I work for the Office of the State Public Defender advocating for restorative justice. I'm the public defender representative on the State Restorative Justice Council, and I belong to a prosecutor, public defender, restorative justice team tasked with expanding the use of restorative justice in Colorado's adversarial court system, a collaboration that is funded by the State Restorative Justice Council in partnership with the Denver DA's office and the Office of the State Public Defender. But my real passion is restorative justice facilitation and teaching others how to facilitate. And specifically for high impact dialogues, sometimes called victim offender dialogues or high risk victim offender dialogues. And I also love the circle process, what we're doing a modified version of today. And I work with the Circles Project, a restorative justice and transformative justice collective that seeks to introduce restorative justice principles into our communities where people are returning to society after being incarcerated in particular. And basically in all of it, I just really like focusing on building opportunities for accountability, meaningful accountability, for dialogue around that, and for healing, and even the possibility of transformation.
Awesome, Liz. Thank you so much. And Casey, I apologize. I was looking at my wrong list of people, so you're next.
It's all good. So to get you back for that, can you remind me what the prompt is, just so I don't get too excited?
Sure, you are allowed to get me back. Basically, what it is that you're doing now, and highlight what it is that you're thinking about with regards to RJ in Colorado. But we're going to get in more depth in terms of what your vision is, so you can save that for round 2.
That was going to be the question. Okay. So my name is Casey Ballinger. I use she, her pronouns, and I am employed as a post-conviction victim advocate at the Blue Bench. And I'm actually the first person to fill that role. And it was started and housed by the second JD. So I know Beth McCann is here, and I appreciate her office's collaboration with that work. The Blue Bench, for those of you who don't know, is the Sexual Violence Resource Center located in Denver, and we serve sort of the surrounding Metro Denver area. And our services range from providing preventative education in schools, talking about sexual violence and consent, to case management for folks who have experienced sexual harm. And it runs from the time of an offense occurs through my role as a post-conviction victim advocate. And so I get involved post-sentencing and provide direct service to survivors of sexual harm, in addition to acting as a victim representative on supervision teams for folks who have committed sex offenses. So making sure that that voice is heard through the process and that accountability is occurring. And so the way that RJ has come into my life, I'm relatively new to this world, is that the Colorado Sex Offender Management Board, part of the standards that govern the treatment that is provided to folks who have been convicted of sex offenses, is there's a step called clarification, and then from that potentially reunification between the folks who have caused harm and the harmed parties. And I have seen so much value in being able to provide that service and facilitate those conversations between those two parties. And then additionally, my hope for the future is to be able to provide those restorative justice practices for folks who may not have the opportunity to either participate in the criminal legal system or have chosen not to participate in the criminal legal system. And so I'm very excited to be having these conversations.
Thank you, Casey. Next, we'd like to hear from Vinny.
Good morning, and thank you all for having me and being here today. My name is Vinny Cervantes, the director of Dasher, Denver Alliance for Street Health Response. Dasher works to create and support community-based responses to conflict and crisis. And typically that exists on a spectrum that we consider cyclical, where we don't consider a point A or point B to crisis or conflict, but rather a continuing process where we can intercept the ways that the criminal justice system has been, the way that people navigate conflict and crisis and getting away from that. And so we're more traditionally associated with our efforts to create non-police community responder models, which includes the Denver STAR program and Aurora's Aurora Mobile Response Team, as well as the other 14 communities that we're working with across the state to create those programs. But we've also worked to create and support restorative justice efforts that includes the Restorative Denver program that I know Liz Porter Merrill was a very big part of, and Denver DA's office, who I think is on the participant list as well. And Dasher continues to serve as an advisory member of that program. But we believe in, as I mentioned, intercepting the moments where the criminal justice system has become the place where we navigate a lot of the situations in a community where we believe we can have other options to navigate those issues. And so we believe in supporting resources for community-based restorative efforts. And that came in alignment with a CCRJP effort to create a statewide network of restorative hubs. And so we fully support that effort, especially as with the different communities that we're working with across the state on the non-police models, we realize that restorative practices are a huge component of both intercepting the moment of crisis or conflict where we could otherwise use restorative practices instead of calling someone like 911, or after the crisis has occurred, and really working to create long-term repair and healing as an alternative to punishment. So again, thank you all for having me and for having all of us.
Thank you, Vinny. Awesome. Next, we'd like to hear from Cynthia.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cynthia Randall. I am with the Latino Coalition for Community Leadership. We're grassroots. We reach out to grassroots organizations and faith-based organizations and provide hands-on support, administrative oversight, and technical assistance to provide and build capacity. We find, form, feature our community partners. My previous life, I worked in the diversion and I worked in child welfare, and my passion grew after being in magical space. I see change, transformation. My vision is to shift the paradigms, to where we're focusing on transforming how we show up and how we interact with one another. The wisdom is in the circle. And as I said, it is magical space. There needs to be a community-led action for healing and accountability for victims, but also for those that have created the harms. My goal is to be a part of that transformation of the social conditions that exist and that perpetuate the violence, and to create spaces for healing and growth. In my role with the LCCL, We're currently looking at the violence interruption and creating healing spaces, healing circles for our violence interruption programs. We want to create space for community hubs through our community partners to resolve issues. Yeah, and
Thank you.
really focusing on cultural aspects, right? The holistic healing and going back to historical traumas and current traumas and dealing with the cultures and the healing that exists in the cultures.
Awesome, Cynthia. Thank you so much. Joaquin, I'd like to hear from you, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for having me. Thanks for, just giving the ear to listen to what we got going on. I am the Vice President of Community Works. Community Works empowers the unemployed and those with barriers to employment to become self-supporting through job preparation and placement. Our vision is to see all job seekers in our community employed and fulfilling their God-given design. We do a lot of work with the Latino Coalition. And in addition to that, I'm also a serial entrepreneur. All the companies that I've created were created with the intention of hiring the formerly incarcerated or the individuals that I guess are living below the poverty level, just to give them opportunity and access to wealth. In addition to that, I also work with Senator Pete Lee's wife with the Pikes Peak Restorative Justice, where we actually intervene with a lot of the youth, specifically the marginalized youth, and give them an alternative to, I guess, oppose getting a jail sentence and or a record. So that's pretty much my day-to-day stuff. I try to keep it quick. I know everybody's busy, so.
Thank you, Joaquin. And Luke.
Hi, all. My name is Luke Yoder. I direct the Center for Restorative Programs, which is a restorative justice-based organization in the San Luis Valley. Our office is in Alamosa, but we serve the 6 counties of our region. I also sit on the board of the Colorado Coalition of Restorative Justice Practices, CCRJP, and sit as a member of CCRJP, a member representative of CCRJP on the State Restorative Justice Council. So I have an opportunity to see things at kind of a local level in rural Colorado, as well as within the state context, sitting on the Restorative Justice Council, which I think is a unique opportunity. And a couple of things that I see, I guess, around the state and here locally is that we're working, so many of us within systems, to try to address systemic challenges relative to incarceration, relative to overcriminalization of typical community behaviors, relative to criminalization of behaviors that happen in schools, relative to all of those different dynamics. And that's really important. We need to work to transform those systems. And I really appreciate hearing from so many folks already this morning about things that are happening outside of the systems, things that are happening within communities and community-based responses. And that's a part of what we do as well. But I want to encourage all of us, as we think about where are we going with this work, to make sure that we're marrying those two approaches, that we're figuring out how we can work best within systems to change them and transform them and make them as equitable and as meaningfully addressing the needs that they're meant to represent as possible, and that they're not causing additional harms, which we all know is too frequently happening. But then also working to rise communities up so that they're able to address the challenges that are happening within their own contexts, and really work to solve those things in ways that don't lead to involvement in all of these systems that we know carry inherent challenges within them. So I think that's part of what I'm seeing within the landscape, is that we really need to not just focus on one or the other, but we need to work on both of those arenas if we want to make meaningful change within the state. And again, I think there's great representation here of folks that are working within and working from without to be able to make some of the changes that we all hope are possible.
Awesome, Luke. Thank you. So AIMS not only is co-facilitating this, but they also are heavily involved in the restorative justice work at Inglewood. So AIMS would like to hear from you as well, please.
Sure, thanks, Elizabeth. I'll just name, I think we have the benefit here of having a vast history of use of restorative practices in our state to support a brand new program. We have a municipal court program. We've been working with our our city prosecutor and our municipal court judge and our school system and our police department to do some of the pre-arraignment work around restorative justice, working with both youth and adults to provide that opportunity for folks rather than going through the traditional court process. So I'll just leave it at that, but so wonderful to be a part of this conversation. So with that, oh, sure.
Sorry, Ames. I wanted to highlight, you will see on your screen the missing voices picture, and just want to take a few seconds for us to be silent and listen within ourselves to what it is that we might be hearing from those who whose voices have been silenced over the years. Thank you so much for that. At this time, we're going to go to round two. And unfortunately, we knew this was going to happen, and indeed it has. We are short on time. So I'm going to take a page from the Alice Price playbook and put a timer on you. So I'm the bad guy. Ames is going to lead you into round two, but I'm going to give everybody just 1 minute, please, to speak. Go ahead, Ames.
Sure, thank you. So our final prompt here is really looking at what is your vision for a more restorative Colorado, whether that has to do with policy, whether that has to do with work within the systems or outside the systems, more community-based responses. But what are you excited about? What are you maybe concerned about? But what's at the essential, what's the essence of you and your vision of helping to realize a restorative Colorado? So with that, Connie, can I ask you to start us off?
Yeah, so for us at the Arc of Aurora and Think Change, access to restorative justice is actually one of the best chances for learning and reducing recidivism for people with intellectual disabilities. But unfortunately, appropriate accommodations to those programs, services, processes are often an afterthought. So our vision for restorative justice in Colorado and certainly Aurora is making sure that we're building these appropriate accommodations and supports at the beginning. So we're not trying to add a ramp after the fact. We know that this works for adult offenders as well as victims, and it's actually substantially more affordable and effective for people with IDD in the community. So we need everyone here to help make that happen and to make sure that restorative justice in Colorado is accessible and available to everyone. Thank you.
Well done. And stop it. I'm sorry. There we go. Sorry.
For me, I would like to mention that LGBTQ plus youth suicidality is on the rise, and it has been on the rise for quite some time recently since the pandemic. And it is very important to create safe spaces for LGBTQ plus youth and incorporating restorative practices in circles so that these youth can explore harms that have happened to them, and ways to just connect with each other is important. So I would encourage everyone to really advocate for LGBTQ plus youth and creating safe spaces that include restorative practices in rural areas specifically, where LGBTQ youth have no access to any support system. And I would also advocate for an LGBTQ plus lens in dealing with restorative justice cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Rami. Great, Casey, who pass to you?
I think that the two people who have gone before me have done a great job of sort of summing it up. I think from the perspective that I'm coming from, folks who have experienced sexual violence, the main dynamic of that piece is having their power and control taken away. So if we can make restorative practices more accessible, I think the biggest goal for most of us as advocates is to provide as many options for survivors of sexual harm as humanly possible. And that may not always be engaging with the criminal legal system. And statistically, most of those cases don't end in conviction anyway. So those systems that we do have in place, which are amazing and incredibly valuable, may not be reaching everyone who has experienced sexual harm. So making it more accessible especially to give more opportunities to communities who may not feel safe engaging with that criminal legal system, but do want that accountability to be had in the harm that has been caused. So providing access to doing that in a safe way, I think would be incredibly important and valuable to the folks, at least that I serve.
Well, building off of what Casey just shared, CC, Colorado Coalition, Colorado Restore, oh man, I always get the acronyms all mixed up. But the Criminal Justice Reform Coalition did a study of actual crime victim voices, of the voices of the people who had been harmed. And this has been done at the national level and now in Colorado, like I said. And an overwhelming majority of crime victims, of people who have been harmed, do not wish to engage the criminal legal system, the carceral system. So if they're not engaging the carceral system, but they still want, as Casey said, accountability, they'd still need financial support and all those pieces, we need to start thinking about how to give people who've been harmed something different. And I am working on and very much an advocate for a statewide equitable system of restorative justice, a center for restorative justice, where anyone who has been harmed can go to this, get information about how to navigate, how to integrate this in the legal system if they are also going through the legal system, or how to do it independently. But my vision of a restorative Colorado is much bigger than the juvenile or legal system. In addition to that Center for Restorative Justice idea for individual harms across the state, you've heard about restorative justice hubs in our communities, and I really believe in returning conflict to communities to handle and address conflict within the community rather than in systems. I see that possible in workplaces as well, and community collectives to support people who've been harmed, to support people who have caused harm. And then one thing that I don't want to leave out is that we're never going to be able to fully embrace restorative principles, values, and practices in Colorado, in this nation, until we reckon with the twin traumas upon which this nation was founded: genocide and enslavement of humans. And so truth and reconciliation is a super important part and a powerful tool in my mind to really building a restorative Colorado, collective healing and liberation. And it all begins with us as individuals. So even though this is a big vision, this starts with us. How do we show up in our relationships with one another? Do we blame, shame, and punish our kids, our family members, our colleagues, ourselves? Or do we start working towards having meaningful accountability, supportive interventions, and healing, and hopefully transformation and liberation for all?
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. I know you have a lot to say, but I had to shut it down.
Yeah, underscoring first what everyone else has said so far, absolutely. And then, you know, I think it's a really incredible moment that restorative justice is getting more and more widely accepted, and people really getting behind that idea and concept, using it both in the criminal justice system as well as in the community. At the same time, we've seen distortions of that concept and co-optation of that concept. And so, as well as creating those community resources, also creating programs within the systems that exist, also on the way to creating those, ensuring that the incredible amount of people that have spent political, social, and economic capital to make those demands a reality are also sitting at that table, also getting the resources to implement programs, and also ensuring that their voices are prioritized in implementing the solutions that we create. So thank you all so much, and I'll stop there.
Cynthia?
Yes, as I said, the idea of creating community hubs, you know, we're in motion for the possibility of creating that through the Violence Interruption Healing Circles. We're looking for community partners to come together and combine our resources to create that space for the communities and provide the RJ opportunities to those communities that honor our traditions, create models for holistic care and safety in relationship to harms that have been done. So healing is what we're trying to create.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Everything that everybody has mentioned is right on center, right? And to echo that, I would say that currently in our communities, the legal system has kind of dislocated our families. It kind of ostracized us from what's going on with the systems. And as a result of that, the true intention of what I thought the criminal justice was trying to do was trying to correct actions, right? And modify behavior, right? But that's not what's happening. So as a result of that, what's essentially happening is we're creating more systems to separate us even further. So what we're trying to do with restorative justice is bring us back together, right? This is an ancient practice, believe it or not, that actually initiated in Africa. When people would actually do something that was in disaccordance with the community, they would actually bring them to the town square and remind them of how great they are. And after they reminded them how great they are, the likeliness of them reoffending would diminish. So that's what we're trying to get back to with restorative justice, to the original practices of our culture.
Yeah, I shouldn't talk anymore. Joaquin, you said it right on. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do, right? Is to get back to our roots. And I think so much of what needs to drive restorative justice in this state is communities. Like, we got to figure this out at the community level, and the systems are there. And I don't see us being able to completely dismantle those tomorrow, right? But what we can do is start at the community and figure out, first of all, how do we build meaningful relationships with one another? Because so many of those are broken right now, the way that I perceive things. There's so much division, so much polarization. We got to figure out how to sit down together again, or just continue to remind ourselves how important that is. And as we do that, then we can come up with ways within our communities to address harms as they occur. And a big part of it, like Joaquin said, is coming together and seeing people as people. And recognizing that we all bring strengths, we all bring challenges, and how do we navigate those together? So I just, again, want to reemphasize, I think, the importance of people within the system. We got a lot of power, people with power positions right now on this call. We need you folks to continue to work to advocate at the state to change and reform the systems that are tearing us apart, that are causing harms. And how do we leverage those to do good things, and to really be able to meaningfully change the way those systems are operating. And then the rest of us that are doing this work in the community, we got to keep doing it. We got to keep building it, keep building hubs, keep building expertise, keep building skill, and recognize that restorative justice is going to look different. The way that I do it, and the way that Joaquin does it, and the way that Cynthia does it, and the way that Rami does it, we're all going to bring our own lens to it, and that's okay. I think we need to keep giving one another permission to do that, and to do what's meaningful in our community, in our tradition, in our culture, in our lens, and recognize that the principles that underlie it are what's most important. So I'm gonna stop talking there, but I just want to appreciate again all the voices and perspectives that have been shared and how valuable they are.
I'll just add two pieces, and then Elizabeth, I'll pass it back to you to wrap us up here. Echo all of the sentiments. And for me, I think that the opportunities for the use of restorative practices is endless. It's just only to the level of our imagination. So some of the conversations that we're starting to have here in Inglewood is to think about how can we utilize restorative practices in working with folks who are experiencing homelessness? How do we start to build community connections between our police departments and our people who are experiencing homelessness? Or how do we utilize restorative practices in community conversations to address our own local oppressions that have happened in our city of Inglewood, and history of the oppressions and the ongoing oppression that's happening? So I really think that there's so many opportunities, as we've heard from everyone, around all of the ways that we can envision these works. I just want to name a thank you, since I get to have this stage before I pass back to Elizabeth. A thank you and an acknowledgement to all of you for your sharing. I recently heard how the Dalai Lama expresses and defines the word eloquence. And he says the telling of eloquence is the telling of a truth in such a way that it eases suffering. And I think we've heard a lot of eloquence from you all today. And the piece that we all know, and I think that has been named so beautifully, is that eloquence just isn't about what we say, but it's about our actions and what we do with that and how we are in the world together. So again, a huge appreciation for all of you for sharing. Elizabeth, I'll pass it back to you.
Ames, thank you so much. Thank you to each of you in the sharing circle. I know there was so much more that could be said, so many beautiful thoughts and ideas and expressions that you had. I'm delighted that we're taping this because this is just the beginning. As I was listening to you all, to all of us, I heard basically that the goal is to restore power, personal power, community power, that people too often feel powerless, and that manifests in ways that are usually destructive. But when we restore power in a controlled manner, in a supportive manner, that's when communities begin to be strengthened. So we're looking at how we can restore power, and people need to be heard and feel that they're being cared about. And then we need to do it in a way that's creative so that we are promoting healing, restoration, and transformation. So our wonderful listening circle, you've got your work cut out for you, but you're not alone. We are with you all of the way. We're so delighted that you're with us. And we really, really are looking forward to what it is that we can do within Colorado to make Restorative Colorado a reality. Back to you, Deb.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Everyone, I'm going to invite you to put yourselves on gallery view in this. Whoops. And you should be able to see everyone who has a camera on, which should include the listening circle folks and our amazing sharing circle folks. Thank you all so much for talking about what you do and what you hope for. I want to invite the listening circle folks to take 1 minute each again to name one thing that you heard from our sharing circle that is really standing out most strongly for you, and one action that you would imagine taking to create a more restorative Colorado. And Alice, I'm wondering if you would be willing to roll call our listening circle folks to answer this prompt about the one thing that's standing out. So each has 1 minute, and I'll do the timer thing again.
Okay, Deb, I'm here.
Thank you.
Let's do our roll call. I believe that Attorney General Weiser has left, but Matt Baca, are you with us?
I am.
Great. One thing.
All right. Thank you all so much. The thing for me is inspiration, and it's not necessarily any specific piece, although there were lots, but just to hear the way that this community is both thriving and working so effectively. And like I said, I feel incredibly inspired, looking forward so much to working with the many partners we have here, seeing Kimberly Parker, who's a granting partner of ours, Luke Yoder and Mayor Medina, who we've worked closely with in the past. And I also just want to note Cynthia Randall at the Latino Coalition. We have a big announcement with the Latino Coalition a little bit later today. So it's amazing to see how all these efforts connect, and really the way that so many are working to make sure that healing and restoration are front and center in public safety. So thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. I don't know if our state public defender, Megan Ring, is still here. If not, Tina Fang, maybe you can add some of your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Alice, and thanks everyone for being here. I just wanted to echo Matt's thoughts. It's very inspiring to see so many different community stakeholders and people involved in the criminal legal system who don't typically really want to collaborate with each other. Not that we don't want to, but the system is designed for us not to, so to speak. And so to Senator Lee's point about the system not working, and then Joaquin mentioned this, touching on this idea that I think the system is working exactly as it was designed, the criminal legal system. And that's part of the situation that we find ourselves in. It is working. It was designed to separate, as Joaquin said. So coming up with collaborations of people like the Public Defender's Office, District Attorney's offices, Liz's role has really opened my eyes about how much could be done when we put aside the fighting for a second and we get to healing. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tina. Lisa Duran.
Thank you very much. This has been wonderful to be part of. One thing that I heard that really resonated with me was that the need to recognize the historical harms, the founding harms of genocide and enslavement, because I believe the harms are still visible today. And meaningful accountability, supportive intervention, leading to healing and transformation just filled my heart hearing those words. So thank you. I think it was Liz that said those words. One thing that I will do is to introduce more fully restorative justice practices within the entire organization of the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition, but with a special focus on our organizers who are working statewide in 5 different regions and our organizing fellows with our members, so that those we need to introduce them because we're actively seeking ways to better transform our communities. And the second thing is to introduce restorative justice practices in the racial justice committee that we have formed as our new union contract. I apologize for going over.
Thank you. Ashley Idris.
Hi, thank you all so much for your time. It was truly remarkable to hear everything. Something I took away and something that's been of interest to me was the emphasis on just different subgroups of students and then different areas and locations. So something that I'm hoping to take back is I collect data generally on restorative justice practices utilized by schools and districts. But what I'm looking at to do now is maybe go a bit deeper to look at various student subgroups comparing rural to urban. So lots more work to do, but I'm excited and just found everything really inspiring. So thank you all for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Gretchen Russo.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, the ARC of Aurora, all the conversation about disability. I sit on the brain injury trust fund board here, and just the connections are huge. And I hadn't really thought about that a lot. So thank you for that reminder. Definitely see it as a juvenile parole board member. And that would be my one takeaway, is really sharing all of this information with the board members to really be thinking about this. We hear about restorative justice. DYS does a lot of around that, but it's helpful for the board members to really think about it in a broader way. So really great to hear from so many people today.
Shannon Sleva.
I just want to honor the process of today. And one thing that sticks out for me is that we often think of restorative practices as an outcome that we're trying to get, but restorative practices are the process. Like this dialogue, the relationship building, this is the way that we're going to get to the outcome that we seek. So being here together with all of you, hearing what people are creating and building in their communities is really honoring that daily practice of restorative justice. And I think the big thing it makes me think for our state leaders that are here is like, how can you remove barriers for us? How can you get out of the way and remove the barriers that folks are running into in their communities as they're trying to build and create? How can you get around the homeostasis where, as Tina said, the system is not really designed for collaboration. So the same thing keeps happening because we can't really manage to go about things differently. I saw a number of people I'm going to contact to expand collaborations on my own projects, and also just take up this challenge to bring RJ into my daily spaces in my workplace, and other spaces that I'm in, because if we can't do it there, then how do we expect anyone else to do it?
Thank you, Shannon. Senator Buckner.
Yes, I am so impressed with the extent of expertise in this group. I would like to make a request if we could get a list of everyone who's on this call and their roles, because when I'm preparing legislation, it's so nice to have that list and be able to reach out to those people. What I heard today that is resonating with me the most, it's nothing new, but just involving the community. I think the community is hungry for this information, and I think that more they know, the more they will understand what we are trying to achieve, because most of the people that I have talked to just don't have an understanding of social justice and restorative justice. And I was a special ed teacher, so I really, when someone talked about how our special ed kids are a part of this system, I can relate to that totally. So I'm just really inspired after this meeting today, but involving the community. I would love to do town halls with this conversation.
Thank you, Senator. And I will say, I don't think we'll have a list of the entire group because it was an open link, but
Right.
we will have a list of those who are in the smaller circles. And also we will have the website for CCRJP and for the Restorative Justice Council. And through those contacts, we can give you access to a wide range of expertise as needed.
Thank you, Alice.
Representative Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Yeah, thank you. I think what really stood out to me is just hearing everyone from kind of coming from different perspectives and the passion behind that for this work. And I think the main word, the main takeaway I heard from all of this was around healing and just how incredibly important that is on a like individual level, but then also on a societal level. And I think what I plan to do or would like to do going forward is continue to do the work that Senator Lee I think has been trying to do as far as imploring this upon our colleagues. When this whole idea, the need for this healing, because I think those are some of the things that we are faced with when we're bringing policy. And we know everyone has their own individual experiences, but just to continue to lift this up.
Thank you. Senator Julie Gonzalez.
Thank you. I think the takeaway for me has been the care and intentionality that you all bring to this work in all of these different, contexts. The way that you have, even just like the setup of this meeting, the care and intentionality of like, please go to gallery, please go, like literally at every step of the way. And for me, that translates a lot to an approach that we can use within our legislative process as well, because similar to the criminal justice system, criminal legal system, that is often inherently oppositional. So too is the political process. And yet we also have to all work together. And we're trying to do what's right for Coloradans. So just really, as I'm heading into meetings with my colleagues, how to take those practices into that work.
Thank you so much. I might just end this part with one of my favorite recent quotes from the Indian writer Arundhati Roy, who says, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." And I think we've heard some of that breathing today. So thank you to the listening circle and sharing circle folks. Deb, are we ready to close out? We're just almost at time.
Yes. Thank you all so much. What a gift to have such esteemed leaders among us today, all of you. So thank you for your, as Ames so beautifully put it, from great wisdom, for your eloquence and your wisdom. So I want to invite everyone to do a chat flow. And your prompt is to type in the chat one thing you all heard today that stands out for you most strongly and the action you want to take. And if you are interested in sharing your contact information, as our legislators may need your support, and you want to share it, put it in the chat and we will make sure that they get that information from here. So please share your information, share something that is standing out strongly for you, and an action. And I'm just going to invite you to let it go. I would count down and have it, but there's so many of us. Let's just let it flow. And then, Alice, that was the quote that I think we were going to wrap up with. So I think let's just close as this chat is flowing by, again, deep gratitude to our listening circle and our sharing circle. We will put the slide loop back up and play a song to take us out as you all are turning on your cameras and waving farewell and sharing your chat information. Thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone.
We also have an evaluation linked in the chat.
Thank you, Kelly.
Leaders, will you be saving the chat?
Yes.
And we will be posting the recording on the 2 websites, the Restorative Justice Council website and the CCRJP website. And when that's ready for posting, you can find it there.
We'll also be sending the links out to all of the CCRJP members. And if you want to learn more about becoming a CCRJP member, you can go to ccrjp.org.
There must be some way out of here, said the Joker to